big news, of course, the change in the United States presidency, which will have a major impact on the news over the coming weeks and months. But in terms of the weather, let's see what's happening around the country. The 500 millibar analysis showing this deep cutoff low off the coast of Southern California. This morning it was located about 200 miles southwest of San Diego, and that is largely the result of some cold air advecting southward and a strong upper-level jet max bound up with that cold air. So that's pushed off to the south, and we're going to gradually see that low start to fill and move eastward over the next couple of days. Conditions are quiet in the central U.S. We have a ridge extending from Texas up to Colorado, but that's not been quite enough to shut off the showers. We've had a bit of that here in our part of Texas, and we're expecting more on the way as that ridge breaks down and the upper level low approaches from the west. And then up to the north, we have a strong jet max. You can see that where the height contours are pinched close together, and that's going to move southeastward towards the Great Lakes and the Midwest. And then further upstream, here's the next wave. So here we can get a better look at it on the heights and vorticity chart. There it is, located there in the Gulf of Alaska, and as it descends down the front side of that ridge, it carves off an upper-level trough. That's going to be the next one in the long line of cutoff lows in California. That'll come across California during the weekend and move eastward, and you can see another one gearing up over the weekend, and that dives south. Another cutoff low, and here comes another one. So quite a lot going on out there, and let's go to the UCSD Scripps Institution of Oceanography and look at their IVT forecasts. So we're looking at the integrated water vapor transport, and this is a good way to see the potential for heavy rains. So this morning, there's that cutoff low there. Plenty of moisture to the south, but it just kind of circulates westward and doesn't really come up much past San Diego. So that moves out, and then we go into the weekend. That's going to be right around here, and you can see most of that moisture goes into Nevada. Not much impact on California. And then the next system approaches around the 24th and 25th. But we can see that the water vapor levels are just going to be marginal. Better potential coming up for the 26th and 27th. Look at that right there. That's values of about 500 to 700 coming into northwestern California. So that's going to be in the moderate to maybe borderline heavy range as far as precip, not record-breaking or anything like that. Some good impacts there in San Francisco and Sacramento. So certainly some rain there around the 27th. And then it dries out a little bit, but it does look like we should get some significant rains there towards the last week of January. Now here's a great way to see the impacts. We're looking at the pressure in black and the thickness in red and blue. So the thickness is kind of a function of the average temperature in the lower half of the troposphere. So with that cutoff low down there, you can see values running about, looks like about 546 to 552 decameters. So I'm looking at those numbers right there. And you're going to, just ignore that, you're going to notice that with the next wave coming down, let me advance this forward into the weekend. Okay, so there's Friday, here comes the next wave. So probably the front's running about like that. And we're going into Friday and then Saturday, and you can see that this has some colder air. Getting those blues coming in there. That's a 534 decameter line coming into the Central California valleys. And this next one is even stronger. This is on Sunday night going into Monday. That's the next system. And you can see that's definitely got a punch. We know that the IVT values on this are not that great either, but it looks like we will be squeaking a little bit more precip from this. And the freezing levels, or I should say the snow levels, will be down to about 3,000 to 4,000 feet, which is pretty low for California. So that means some areas in the high deserts The Mojave deserts, the foothills of some areas, they may see some snow coming down. So we're looking at Sunday night going into Monday there. And you can see that the thicknesses are even lower, 528 decameters coming in there. And it's been a long time since I've seen values that low in that region. So certainly some snow there in California, and you can see how these waves are also going to have effects downstream in the Four Corners area, New Mexico and Texas. And especially down there in Texas when you have this ridging coming in from the north and you have these systems riding over the top of that, that's going to mean at the very least cloudy conditions. And sometimes it'll mean precipitation, and if it's cold enough, that can mean snow. But I'm not really too sure we're going to see that, because you can see we're only seeing 540 decameters, 546 in Texas, and that means 40s, maybe low 50s for highs in Texas. And here comes another powerful system for the middle of the week, and we know from IVT indications that this one's going to be stronger. And that looks like some pretty heavy precip there and some good snows there in Northern California. Looks like maybe even a few thunderstorms there. So that's going to move through the state, 27th, 28th, early 29th, and then that'll drift eastward. And of course, there will be the downstream effects in Texas. And after that, we're getting up to 240 hours, so we're not going to worry about that too much, but I'm just taking a quick look out west, and it does look stormy. Oregon, Washington, getting some of that precip there. So it seems like we're moving a little bit away from the La Nina stagnation and maybe getting a little taste of El Nino. Not that that's what's happening, but it's kind of that stormy pattern that we see during El Nino. Anyway, now let's focus our attention on the central and eastern U.S. So let's run that back. Okay, starting things out. Oh yeah, we better look at the analysis. Okay, across the U.S. today. Still stagnant high pressure all the way from the west coast into the southeastern U.S. That high pressure actually represents some stagnating cool air. You can see those temperatures there in Texas in the 40s and 50s. And as a result, there's a little bit of flow over the top of that air mass, and you can see we're getting those clouds and precip that I had talked about. Although, we're not getting the nose of very cold, fresh air coming south. There's just enough residual cold air to allow for some isentropic lift. And let's see, up to the north, we've got a new Alberta clipper. This one's actually occluded into a 983 millibar low there in western Ontario, and south of that, some very gusty winds coming through Minnesota and the Dakotas. The highest winds I'm seeing looks like maybe 35 knots up at International Falls. That's going to be about 40 miles an hour. We're talking about gusts. It looks like 44 up near Minot, north of Bismarck. And that's mostly a downslope wind, and you can see the temperatures up there. They're not too severe. Stagnant weather also in the northeast. Old polar air mass still kind of locked into place. And let's take a quick look up north to see what's happening. And it actually looks pretty quiet. Definitely cold. I see plenty of minus 10s, and I saw a minus 26 in this area earlier. So this is very cold polar air, but you can see the pressures are not that high. So it's not really going to go anywhere. We're not going to have to worry too much about northern Canada for probably the next 5 days at least. So, yeah, looking at the central and eastern U.S., well, there's that front right there. You can see north of the warm front, the box is formed up by the thickness and pressure, indicating warm air advection there, and similar scattered boxes there indicating cold air advection. And that little couplet of cold and warm air advection regions are going to drift eastward, so there should be some deteriorating weather in the northeast. But as you can see, it's not really coupled with the tropical moisture down to the south, so we're not really expecting a whole lot out of that system. Famous last words. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's not really doing much. And you can see that occlusion there is even decoupled from the thickness bands down to the south. So this is well into the occluded stages of development, and we're not going to really look for any new development except down in this region here. I'm not sure if we have a wave available. Yeah, actually there is one down there. So let's see, that doesn't really develop much, just kind of shifts eastward. Here comes some new high pressure coming south over the weekend, 1031 millibar low, so that's going to bring high 1031 millibar high, so that's going to bring some fresh cold air southward. You can see that some lake effect snows get going there. It's getting a little bit late in the season for lake effect, but I do see some indication of that there. And then moving forward, here comes one of those systems out of California. This is on Saturday night. So there's the frontal setup. Texas under warm air advection. And we get a little snowstorm up there in the northern plains. Moves up into the Great Lakes area for Sunday night. Looks like some fresh cold air coming south. There's some more high pressure, and you can see low thicknesses up there, 498 decameters in Manitoba. So that'll inject a little bit of cold conditions on the northern plains. Here's a new wave coming together there in Texas on Monday. Some severe weather possible, maybe. Certainly warm air advection in Tennessee and Alabama. Things going downhill once again. This is where California is getting beat up by that strong cold air advection. So let's watch that come out of the Rockies. There it is, crossing Arizona on Monday night into Tuesday. And finally, it's emerging into far west Texas. And the fronts, they're pretty far to the south, so this is going to be kind of acting on the upper levels to some extent. Yeah, just not much reflection at the surface, and that kind of heads eastward. But at that point, it may pick up a wave down in this area. Let's see if it, yeah, there it goes. So there's our front and low pressure area, and enough cold air up to the north to get maybe some mixed precip and snow in the Appalachians and Ohio River Valley region. Big 1042 millibar high up to the north late next week, continuing to push some cold air south. So that's going to put the brakes on any big warm-ups. That system in the Atlantic region moves off to the sea, and let's see, we're getting towards the end of the most accurate part of the run. There comes another little system into the central plains and into the Midwest. And as we get into February, we were looking for a huge buildup of Arctic air up to the north. Now, we do have to take that with a grain of salt. GFS loves to do that. However, we did see indications in the upper patterns, especially over the Gulf of Alaska, the big, broad, low-pressure area. That's kind of a good sign that maybe there is something going on in that region. So this is the area we're going to be watching for the first week of February. So starting out, we do get a storm system working on that area. And let's see, do we pull that cold air together? No, looks like it backs off on that. Let's take a quick look up there and see what's going on. So we're kind of looking in this area where I've got it parked here on February 2nd, and there's some high pressure area up to the north, but it's not very well organized. So, yeah, I mean, there is some cold air up in western Canada, but it's not the big 1040, 1050 millibar high pressure area that we had on yesterday's show. And the 850 millibar temperature anomaly does develop some cold air, but it backs off on the idea of moving it south. So that shows you some of the problems you can get into with these long-range products. That doesn't mean we're not going to have cold air, but we just don't know. So maybe we should just not look at anything past 240 hours. I mean, we got plenty to talk about. So maybe we'll start focusing on everything before 240 hours. Does that sound good? And one other area we were watching yesterday was a developing storm system in the UK. At this hour, we've got snow showers from Newcastle up to Edinburgh. And there's those gusty westerly winds behind the cold front, which is located somewhat like that, maybe a little further west. So not quite to London yet, but the GFS was bringing an awfully strong pressure gradient through that area there. So there's a quick look at that action. That's the current chart. You can see that cold front just west of London, almost right up on them, and the little bands of snow back into the Midlands. And that's a pretty deep low. That's a strong baroclinic system, and that's moving out into the North Sea, and it should be out of the picture very quickly by tomorrow. But the winds, let's check on that. A good place to look at these wind gusts is going to be wxcharts.com. Now, this plot is a little bit confusing because they use a double purple scheme. In fact, let me bring this up and show you what I'm talking about. You notice that there's two sets of purple on this scale, which is kind of confusing. This is actually weak winds, and then this is actually strong winds. Okay, so anyway, I'll help you sort through this. Let me run that back to the current time. Let me go back 3 hours. You can see that front making its way through England right there. It looks like the strongest winds are just out ahead of it, where there's those reds and purples. It looks like the strongest winds altogether are in the English Channel, right in here. This right here, that's about 90 kilometers an hour. That's going to be up near 50-mile-an-hour gusts. And you can see that it just gets stronger as we get up to the current time. Right now, you can see we're getting into that lavender shade, which is 100 kilometers per hour. That's about 60-mile-an-hour gusts. So that's quite a windstorm going through the English Channel area. So this is a little bit further south than what we had thought yesterday, and then that sweeps up into the North Sea, and then it's kind of out of the picture, but not gone. We just have to change the region here. So there's one more look at that windstorm, and there's the current weather. You can see that storm in the English Channel. And then around 3Z, which is about 9 p.m. here in the U.S., it looks quite strong there. Some widespread 60 to 70 mile-an-hour winds north of the Netherlands. And then it gets carried up towards Denmark around daybreak. And then just this huge band of strong winds, that's getting up near 120 kilometers an hour. That's probably going to be about 80 miles an hour up there in the North Sea. And that looks like it's heading up towards Stavanger, Norway. So probably some brutal conditions right there along the Norwegian coast. And then eventually that system occludes, and then we're done with the winds. So a little bit of fun there, I guess if you're in Amsterdam or Brussels. Anyway, check that out online if you want to get a better look at that scenario. And I think that'll do it for this edition of Forecast Lab. Thank you for joining. Let me get this uploaded and posted, and we will see you all tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.